so much for that wonderful introduction, Ryan. And just piggybacking on what you said, so I am located again at Nourish Craft Farms. I really actually wanted to get into the forest today, but I didn't want to deal with narrow trails and mask wearing and trying to teach and talk to you guys, whole people passing by. So here I am at Nourish Craft Farm, north of Bellingham, and this land was originally stewarded by the Lummi Nation as well as the Nooksack tribe. It's a nice confluence area of the two. So I just want to take a moment to honor those peoples today. And, you know, I think also just in light of our introductions, both what Rianne shared at the end and just with my acknowledgement of the, you know, this whole concept of like stewardship. Like, what does it mean to be a land steward? And I'm gonna just come back to that throughout the class today. You can consider it just sort of a rhetorical question at this point. And then also, if anything does come to mind, the chat box is the perfect place to bring in your insights and your creative ideas and thoughts and maybe further questions, right? Like, this is something to explore with curiosity. Like, how are we stewards of the land? You know, one of my not biggest, she feels so big to me, a huge mentor of mine, I say that because I've read her book like twice and have read other parts of it like 10 times. I wish I knew her. Maybe someday. Her name's Robin Wall Kimmerer, and she's the author of Braiding Sweetgrass. And a question that she poses in her book that I love and I come back to again and again is like, the earth offers us a lot of these beautiful gifts of food, medicine, water, like everything, right? How do we practice reciprocity? How are we giving back to the land in return? So kind of like both of those questions, how do we practice reciprocity, and what does it look like to be a steward in today's society? So without further ado, this plant's like looming over me and like, excuse me, I want to be part of this conversation. So we are gonna bring her in. This is the first plant we're gonna be talking about. So I want to show you guys some of the primary characteristics that definitely stand out for me. Let's get a little specimen here. So here's the flower. And as you can see, the arrangement of the flower kind of looks like an umbrella that got blown upside down. And then on top of each flower is an arrangement of these yellow flowers. And I really like it. It's an interesting stage that this plant is in right now. You can see the tiny yellow flowers, but then as they age and mature, that fruiting body is going to continue to get larger and larger. Let's see if there's some more mature fruiting bodies, which is the primary medicine of this plant. Does anybody know what this is? Oh, look at this guy. Hey there, bee. Oh, and we'll two of the characters. Here's the leaf. Nice and feathery and soft, super soft. If you guys were able to do a scratch and sniff here, I'm certain that the smell of it would help lead you to the answer as well. It's very like, well, goodness, it smells like licorice candy. However, this is not licorice root. So what could this plant be?
Wow, it looked like there was a couple of glitchy, it looks like we're finally catching back up video-wise to you. I know it sometimes does that when we're outside.
Oh, gotcha.
But we can still see pretty
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful yellow flowers. You said it smells like licorice?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like that sort of like licorice smell flavor that I think we're familiar with in the food industry.
Hmm.
Feathery
I
leaves,
see.
soft. And
Yeah,
then
I see.
again,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, so I don't know what part got missed with that little glitch there, but I wanted to just point out that these little flowers and fruiting bodies end up turning into the primary part of the medicine that this plant puts out through the seed. So this is fennel.
Fennel.
Fennel. So yeah, and I want to just bring up the concept of like that. So fennel, I have learned and discovered with my own just history of working with it and learning amongst many other people with it, is that it has that sort of, it's very sweet, the flavor of fennel seed, and it's very aromatic and often associated with what licorice candy tastes like, much more than what actual licorice root tastes like. um I was trying to think of ways to explain the flavor since we can't share the tasting of it today. But you could potentially also go to your kitchen if you have fennel seed and just nibble on a couple of those seeds so that you can get a sense of what the plant's taste characteristics are like. And then also with the arrangement of these flowers, how they're shaped like umbrellas is characteristic to the plant family that it is part of, which is some know it as the Apiaceae family, but it's the old Latin name for it is the Umbelaceae family, or umbrella. Common name, the carrot family. So fennel plant, which the Latin name for fennel is Foeniculum vulgare, belongs to the same plant that carrots belong to, which, look at these sisters right next door, all these carrots in this row. Other plants that belong to the carrot family are celery, anise, caraway, cumin, as well as osha root and lomatium, which are two other local plants that are native to the Pacific Northwest that are great for immune support, which we are not going to be talking about today, but they're also from that family. So the part of the plant that's used as medicine, again, is the seed. And fennel seed has some pretty powerful constituents in it that provide the medicine that herbalists and any person utilizes. The first thing that I think about actually when I see fennel is this term called carminative. And what a carminative is a type of action that a plant does medicinally that helps with indigestion and gas and bloating and that distension of the belly, like that leads to a lot of discomfort. I think about the picture of someone who has maybe normal to excess levels of gas production, and that it's just not able to move through the small intestines and the large intestines in a fluid way, and it gets stuck, and then the body tenses up, and there can often be downstream symptoms of things like pain and discomfort and feelings of fullness much too early, thinking about it more from a naturopathic perspective. So carminatives are really great plant medicines that can help with that kind of picture. What carminatives do, and that includes not only fennel, but a lot of fennel's brothers and sisters, like the caraway, the cumin, are also really great at helping with, and that has that carminative action. The anise, is that it helps reduce that spasming and that holding and that tension of the muscles in the intestines, So it helps relax that tubing where the gas is moving through to allow appropriate flow. It also helps with the peristalsis of the digestive tract, which is that rhythmic, regular contraction and movement to help move the food and contents that we're trying to digest and absorb through the intestines in a healthy and fluid way. Carminatives also help with the reduction of gas production in general. And so they can be really great for that kind of picture. In addition to that carminative action, fennel does have special antispasmodic actions, specific not only to the small intestines. And so again, antispasmodic, helps reduce the spasming and discomfort of certain muscles. Fennel has more of an affinity towards smooth muscles, which are not the type of muscles that we are toning and working out when we do things like lift weights and go to the gym, or not go to the gym if it's 2020. Work out at home. But smooth muscles are typically surround a lot more of our vital organs. So the smooth muscles are found within the digestive tract, like the stomach, the small intestines, the large intestines. Smooth muscle surrounds other hollow organs. That's another great way to think about it, like the bladder or the uterus, another hollow organ that's surrounded by smooth muscle. Smooth muscle also surrounds things like blood vessels to help with whether the vessel can be dilated or contracted. So dilated means the vessel opens up wider. Contracted means it closes and constricts. And consequently, fennel helps with the anti-spasming of these muscles, of these hollow organs. So the intestines, the uterus, the bladder. It also has an affinity for another round area, which are the bronchioles and the bronchus of our lungs. So the pathway of our lungs start in our mouth, they go down the trachea, and at some point they branch off, just like a tree does, into what are called the bronchi or the bronchus. And then from there, they're branching off into smaller parts of the respiratory system called bronchioles. And then from there, it coalesces into the more smaller parts, the more extensive parts of the lungs, and keeps breaking down and down and down until you get to these small little air sacs called alveoli in the lungs. Little brief anatomy lesson here. But fennel can be really great for the upper respiratory tract and any spasming. So if you think about really like paroxysmal or spasmodic coughing that happens, like that sort of cycle that you can get stuck in sometimes when you're coughing, where the more you cough, the more you need to cough, and then the more you cough, the more you need to cough more, and it's just this vicious cycle. That's a spasmodic type of cough, and something that fennel could potentially help alleviate or at least calm down a bit. What else? Fennel is also a great herb, and again, we're talking about the seeds, that helps with milk production for breastfeeding mothers. And it's also a phytoestrogen. So this is a plant that has plant-based estrogen. It's not exactly the same kind of estrogen that we make as humans, but it's like estrogen light. It's a very light version of it. And phytoestrogens can be really great to take if there's an imbalance in estrogen in the body. So it can help regulate if there's too much estrogen. You can take things like fennel. Other great phytoestrogens that I think about are beans, like any legumes, pinto beans, lentils, adzuki beans. Those are all great phytoestrogens as well. And they can come in and occupy receptors with their much lighter action of estrogen activity compared to if there's excess estrogen that we are making internally in our body. So it kind of helps dampen or cool down that estrogen response. In turn, if there's someone who's really low in estrogen and they want to pick it up, the consumption of phytoestrogenic foods can also help, because even though it's estrogen light, you're still taking in more through your food and diet, and helps occupy those receptors that maybe would have been vacant otherwise. So it's a really great, plants that can be a really great way to balance hormone levels without doing it with a lot of force. There are some very beautiful aromatic, fragrant essential oils. Volatile oils is another term, found in fennel. Those are actually part of some of the powerful medicine, and where a lot of the carminative activity is. So that's something I want to point out when it comes to how you're going to prepare fennel to take it as a medicine. Of course, first and foremost, recommendations of how to use fennel as a medicine: cook with it, use it in your food. I would recommend buying whole fennel seeds, not ground up fennel. That stuff is just inert at best by the time it gets home. Get the whole seeds, and maybe take your, consider investing in a mortar and pestle so that you can actually break open those seeds and release these vibrant medicines from the seed that are being held and contained in there, as needed when you're cooking and preparing food. Another important thing to consider with some of these more culinary herbal medicines that are potentially more likely to be found in your household is that the storage of the herbs is really important to help maintain the quality of them. So keeping them out of direct sunlight, extreme heat is another way to preserve the quality of the medicine. And if if that fennel seed has been sitting on your shelf for like 5 years, you don't really use it that often, it's got this like, dead grass type color, I would just consider throwing it out and restocking with some fresh stuff. Fennel's really cheap and affordable too. It's totally worth the investment. As far as making and preparing a fennel tea or herbal infusion, because it's a seed and it's more dense, I would recommend doing an herbal decoction, which is heating up water to a low boil, adding the plant, in this case fennel seed, to it, and then covering it up and bringing the heat down so it's just a nice low boil, and letting that, which is in the herbal term, that's decocting. If you're cooking, you're boiling it. If you're making medicine, and you're decocting it, and just allowing that to decoct for 20 to 30 minutes. But it's really important to cover herbs that are being decocted, because a lot of those medicines that are found in the plants that are things like essential oils or volatile oils will evaporate and escape through the steam if it's left uncovered. So you're missing out on some parts of the medicine, and actually you'll know that you made a good infusion or decoction of an herbal extract or herbal infusion, I guess, when the plant, or when the tea is all done, you see an oily film on top of it. Then you know you got all the medicine out of the plant. I'm noticing a couple questions come in. I just want to say one more thing about essential oils, and then just a couple considerations for contraindications, and then we can go to questions and discussions on fennel. I do want to make a note of the essential oil fennel. If you're making it from the whole plant, it's generally considered safe. It's a plant food, fennel seed. It's used in the culinary world, as well as the herbal medicine world of, infusions, teas. There's fennel tinctures that are used. My husband formulates his own teas. He's a naturopathic doctor up here in Bellingham as well. And fennel's like one of his favorite tinctures to add to many different formulas, just because it's so versatile, and those herbal actions are just incredibly helpful in a lot of different conditions. But when it comes to fennel essential oil, only use it topically. there is a high risk of overdose of taking fennel essential oil internally. And those symptoms of overdose include nausea, vomiting, seizures, as well as pulmonary edema. And in general, like as a naturopathic doctor, as an herbalist, I just also advise to use caution taking any essential oils internally. They're a powerful, powerful, powerful medicine, like at the top of the hierarchy as far as medicine preparations. And typically, like they're recommended to be incorporated into other herbal preparations, salves, topicals, adding them to a carrier oil to apply topically. Very rarely should essential oils be taken internally, and that's only under the advisory guidance of a trained medical health professional. So I felt the duty to just really acknowledge that, because I think that's a really big misconception. And volatile oils like binding to fats in the body, and one body system that has a lot of fats is our nervous system. A lot of our nerves are covered in a fat called the myelin sheath. And so a lot of these essential oils taken internally, and even just like moderate doses, can be neurotoxic, which makes sense why the overdose of fennel includes seizures, because it's lipophilic and it's binding to a lot of the anatomical elements of the nervous system. The only other thing with fennel is, if you're pregnant, just be sure to consult with a qualified health practitioner in using it. If you're eating food with fennel in it, it's commonly found in like Italian sausage and a lot of like Indian dishes. I love how at Indian restaurants they actually have like the candy coated fennel seeds at the end, because of that carminative action I talked about in the beginning. It's such a great digestive aid. But if you're going to be doing it more regularly, like daily doses, consult with a health practitioner. Pretty much if you're going to start any herb pregnant, consult with a health practitioner. All right, so I want to do a check-in. What questions are coming up right now?
Thank you so much, Sarah Sue. This is amazing. I've missed your tours so much.
You're so welcome.
We have a couple of questions. One from Leah. Leah's asking, does eating it help with the lungs, or do you have to steam it and inhale?
Oh, that's a good question. I really like the concept of steam inhalation. However, let me think about that. So I'm going to think through this answer out loud. If it's an acute thing, you could. It's a little bit more tricky because it is because it's more dense. If I were doing the steam inhalation to address spasmodic cough, I would probably utilize thyme leaf, THYME, and something like rosemary rather than fennel. Fennel, I would actually take some seeds, chew them up, and eat them. That's the quickest, easiest way to take that medicine, or making a tea and sipping it. Tincture is also great. Tincture is a reminder of those. Those are a liquid extract of the plant, and typically the liquid that's used to extract the medicinal constituents from the plants are alcohols, so like vodka, brandy, but also can be, you can find tinctures that are glycerites, which are a lot better options for kiddos and people that know their boundaries with alcohol and want to stay away from it.
And so you mentioned that the thyme leaf and rosemary are for spasmodic cough more so, and you recommended a tea or tincture as well?
That would be the steam inhalation.
Steam inhalation.
Yeah. And so with that, since it's coming up, let me share that with you guys. So a steam inhalation, you're going to take a pot of water and bring it to a low boil, and you're going to add the herbs to it. This is like also, okay, and I will pause. If you're using a whole plant, those are good ones to come by. However, if you do have fennel essential oil, yes, use it. See, I love the medicine and like how to utilize these medicines because it actually involves so much creativity and just like exploring with trial and error. So like if you just have whole plants, I would stick to thyme because the leaf is thinner and you don't want to spend a whole lot of time over having your head over that steam because it's hot. And so that's something to be cautious of. Use your hand to go over that steam first. Get a sense of the level of where you're not going to burn yourself. In my previous life, before I was a naturopathic doctor, I used to fight fires. And so we used to use our hands quite a bit to find hot spots and mopping up after a fire went through. And so I would recommend using the back of your hand because there's less nerve endings and you're less likely to get burnt and hurt yourself, but still it's really effective temperature gauge. So feeling that steam level. And once you get a sense of that level above the pot, take a towel, drape it over your head so that you are containing and capturing that steam and breathing it in. If you have the essential oil, whether it's thyme leaf, fennel seed, those can go in and you can use those. And typically I would say like 3 to 5 drops is really a therapeutic amount. And just breathe, deep breaths in, deep breaths out.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And be ready if there's any congestion to just start running like a faucet. This is not a pretty method, but it does the trick.
That's such a good question, Leah. And
Yeah.
also, so I just want to say, since we're mentioning time, TYME, we're at 12:30. There are a couple more questions about fennel. Or just one follow-up from Leah, wondering if you suggest using fennel on its own for stomach spasms or combining it with others like peppermint.
Ooh, I like the peppermint idea. Yes, because peppermint does have that carminative action as well.
Wow.
It just kind of depends on preference for one, on availability. However, I do love the concept of using herbs and formulas because then you start getting these more synergistic aspects. And, it's like when you think about synergy, it's not like cumulative, like 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, but like 1 + 1 can equal like 10 when it comes to herbal influence and actions. So peppermint can be a great one. Or Leah, it's almost like we planned this question because I will show you another one that would be a great partner for carminative action in an herbal formula right now, which is this guy. So we have these tiny, sweet little flowers. Here's a couple of good specimens. They look like daisies. They smell like floral bubblegum is what it reminds me of. Mixed with like it's kind of like a combination of floral bubblegum and yarrow and I mean, does anybody know what this plant is? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah. Allison immediately said chamomile in the chat.
Yep.
Good eye.
Yeah. Before I start rambling too much about this stuff. Chamomile. And so I want to just show you guys because chamomile does look really similar to a lot of other daisy-like plants. So how do you tell the difference? A big part is looking at the plant structure. So chamomile comes out of the ground. Is this a good visual? I can't actually see the screen just due to the glare right now.
Yeah, when you were focusing on the flowers, we can tell.
Okay.
Right now we see roots and stems.
Yeah, so this is the base of the chamomile plant. And it goes up. So it's pretty extensive. You're not going to confuse a single daisy with chamomile because chamomile grows in a big bush like this. And when these ones are pretty late in the late stages, but the leaves are very light and feathery looking. It's part of the aster family or the composite family. Composite because of the flower arrangement. Other plants from the composite family include dandelion, these lovelies, sunflowers, chamomile, which we covered last month. And the Latin name for chamomile is Matricaria Rekutifa. And I remember when we were learning about it, I have this like great friend and classmate, because we were trying to figure out ways to remember like how to memorize some of these Latin names of plants. And a great way to do that is like to create a story about it, because then all of a sudden it has a lot more meaning and it's easier to remember. And my friend Angela, who I was in class with, we were talking about this little guy, chamomile or gal, and matricaria, which if you look at that Latin root word, matriarch, maternal. So it's very motherly. And connecting it back to one of these fairy tale or there's a story about Peter Rabbit who gets sick and his mom makes him chamomile tea and like spoons it to him before he goes to sleep. So I always think about that. So matricaria being a very maternal sort of plant. And it really is. Like the way its medicinal actions work is like how a mother has to handle and navigate a child that's in distress. So when I think about chamomile, the first thing I think about, the main pictures I think about that it helps with is it helps with pain, it helps with inflammation, it helps with irritability and spasming. So I mean, right, like if you're experiencing pain, are you going to be in that good of a mood? Maybe, but likely you're going to be a little crabby, maybe even a little irritable. If there's inflammation, one of the symptoms of inflammation can be pain. It could also be a disruption in normal daily bodily functions. Maybe there's some increased gas production, spasming. All of those conditions lead to a not such happy camper. And chamomile can come in and help address all of them in these really effective ways and help ease and soothe some of these symptoms such as pain. It's really great at helping reduce pain. One of the herbal actions is called anodyne, which just simply means to cut or lower the pain. It's also an antispasmodic as well as a carminative, just like the fennel seed. Anti-inflammatory in nature. And there's actually this really cool essential oil found in chamomile called chamazoline. Chamazoline. I think it's a really cool word because it has the beginning of chamomile and then azul and then ene, which is a biochem thing. And it's literally blue colored, azul. So if you ever have a chamomile essential oil and there is no sign of blue coloration, it's not good stuff. Look for that blue color.
That's so beautiful.
Yes, perfect spelling there. Another plant that has the chamazoline that helps with pain and inflammation is yarrow, the yarrow flower, which is commonly found in wild places. I say wild places because it grows in so many different places, but I often will cross paths with it. I've crossed paths with it hundreds of times, fighting fires in the past, hiking, backpacking, camping, stopping on the side of the road to pee, like whatever. Yarrow grows everywhere, and thank goodness it's got good medicine. But back to chamomile. Let's see, I just want to take a look at my notes here and make sure I am not missing any important things. The only contraindications really for chamomile is if you have like an allergy, kind of like a garden variety type allergy to pollens from plants of this family. And again, it'll typically be more seasonal allergy type reactions, but it can cause contact dermatitis in some. And with that, I just want to recommend, if you're starting to learn about a new herbal medicine, a new plant, always just start low and go slow. Even if it's using a new essential oil, just do a tiny little bit on one little part of your skin and just see if there's like any sort of like redness, puffiness, contact dermatitis type reaction that happens before you really dive into a full recommended dose of it.
Thank you so much for mentioning the safety aspect. I know you just gotta test these things out.
Yeah. I mean, I've learned my own lessons because I have not always been so prudent. Um, but yeah, and everybody has such unique responses to these plants. Like I know, like with valerian root, it's commonly a plant that people use, herbalists know helps with insomnia, and it's supposed to help calm you down and put you to sleep. I've crossed paths with many patients and people that have the complete opposite effect happen when they take valerian. It's very stimulating and it wakes them up. So, all of us have such unique bodies and constitutions and the ways that we metabolize things. There's so many influences on how our body can take in a medicine and then respond to it. So one thing I do love about getting into herbs and learning, becoming a budding herbalist, you don't have to know as much as I know about plants to be an herbalist. I mean, step number one of being an herbalist, in my personal opinion, is paying attention. So paying attention to the characteristics of the plant, paying attention to where it's growing. Chamomile isn't the best example, but like say that you're like out on a walk, and last month we talked about mullein, and you find a single mullein plant, and that's all you find on the entire trail. Like, is it actually responsible to harvest that plant, or is that one you let be because it's the single specimen in an area that you've surveyed? It's just paying attention to the different characteristics of plants. You may not know what the plants are, but just simply paying attention, you may start to recognize them, and get to know them in that way. Maybe you're not learning all the academic stuff, but that doesn't mean you're not learning. I think step one of being a steward, even of the land, is first and foremost paying attention and noticing what's going on around you.
We have some questions and comments in the chat. Would
Yeah.
that be a good time to bring them up? Okay. Steven or Stefan, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Well, when you were starting to talk about the synthesis between fennel and chamomile, I was looking up at Steven's earliest comment, kind of referencing, it's odd that indigenous cultures actually seem to increase biodiversity rather than be neutral, like the West, and tries to, the West has isolated and destroyed so much biodiversity. And I think it was just a really beautiful synthesis to see you in action, talk about fennel, chamomile kind of together, how they might be able to help the stomach in Leah's comment, and but also just the practice of responsible land stewardship and making sure that your plant is safe and it's respectful and responsible for you to pick it if it's there or harvest it. So I just wanted to shout out Stephen for that. I'm gonna go with Stephen unless you correct me. And then he also shares he used to use valerian root to go to sleep in a house that had non-soundproof walls, and they used to just knock out because he couldn't sleep. And he would actually, I'm sorry if I'm assuming your pronouns, but Stephen would get a little high on the stuff or a little drunk and take if taken in pill form to go to sleep with, and just wants to share that you can get woozily zonked on the tea with the tea. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then Maria shares, in Mediterranean countries, chamomile is used as a remedy for plenty of body ailments. It's great for eye washes when the eyes are irritated or tired. And Maria said that they don't know of many other herb infusions safe for topical use with eyes. Would you be able to speak to that at all?
For topical infusions for the eyes, I mean, it makes sense that chamomile would be a good choice, and that is something you noticed in your part of the world, right? Because it's one other action that I didn't mention is that it is antimicrobial. And microbes is sort of like an umbrella statement that includes things like bacteria, viruses, fungi, yeast. So it helps address maybe why the eyes are irritated if it's an infection. But it also helps with the pain, and it helps lower the inflammation. So even if it's not infection related, maybe it's the body's response to, environmental allergies, or there's like a sty. It's more of an internal process that's expressing itself through the skin around the eye. The chamomile wash can be really great. Another one I really like, another important herbal action I like to incorporate in when it comes to like herbal eye infusion compresses is something that's rich in tannins or astringent, because it helps to tonify and close the tissue when it's really open and oozy and weepy. So I will just list three main ones that come to mind when I think of tannins and astringents. I think of rose petals. I think of the leaves from raspberries or blackberries. Those are really astringent and tannin rich. So those are like three examples. Oh, and black tea. Black tea is another one. That can also just help tonify the tissue, but also help sometimes draw stuff out if that's the case too. And again, I would recommend doing, sometimes the quick and dirty way to address a woozy, weepy eye, if you want to do something herbally, is just soaking a black tea bag in some warm water for a couple minutes and then just putting that tea bag right over your eye. I actually have treated past pets and my child once when he had conjunctivitis with tea bags, and it worked really great. One thing that chamomile is really known for is that it's a very calming and relaxing herb. But interestingly enough, I was actually reviewing the books that I use as references this morning, and just double checking, because I was making this observation of that actually the herbal action called nervine, which is to help calm and relax us, or sedative is another one, are not herbal actions of chamomile, which I thought was so fascinating, and it hadn't really stood out to me until this morning. And especially even with this Aesop's fable, like Peter Rabbit's mother, like giving him chamomile tea to help him go to sleep. But it's actually quite naturopathic, that chamomile is, because what it's doing, it's not just going in and calming the nerves down, it's actually addressing more of these underlying reasons why we might be irritable and need to calm down. It's addressing things that are probably making us irritable, feeling uncomfortable and in pain. If there's inflammation going on, it helps calm that down. It helps address some of these underlying causes that maybe manifest as irritability and anxiety. Am I missing any? Those are like the primary things, and maybe just addressing those actually lead us to just reside in a more relaxed state in our body when we are not feeling so uncomfortable. Chamomile's really great for that restless, agitated state. It can be a tonic to help calm and soothe the nervous system over time, only because there's probably inflammation that's impacting that body system, is sort of my guess and theory at this moment. So yes, you could say chamomile is calming, but it's also, I think, addressing some of these underlying reasons of why someone may not be calm in the first place.
That is so brilliant. I adore you. I love your synthesis and getting to the root of what could be harming us is actually um, preventing us from that sleep. That's just brilliant to consider.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, especially with sleep, um, it's not like there is a one all medicine for everybody because there's many reasons why someone can't sleep or why someone feels anxious. And and as a naturopathic doctor and in naturopathic medicine, the whole concept is to treat the cause. And so, sure, you could give them valerian to help with the insomnia, but what if like they just lost someone close to them like a month ago and they're in a grieving process? I mean, valerian sometimes is helpful because they just still need to get sleep, but maybe addressing the cause is giving them a space to grieve. Other people, a common thing that happens in insomnia for those that are waking up in the middle of the night is simple hypoglycemia. Your body blood sugar levels drop down, the physiologic or biochemical response, and then what happens is the body wakes itself up because of that, because it's a stressor. And so just a simple action of eating a protein-rich snack before bed will help someone sleep through into the night. But the important thing is doing that extra amount of investigation and questioning and that curiosity of like, well, what's going on here? Like, yes, the symptom's coming up and it's being manifested, but why is that? And I mean, I think about that with a lot of going back to environmental stewardship too. We're seeing some of these downstream symptoms and effects, but what if we were to explore upstream? Like, what's going on? Like, what is leading to this end result? Because that's probably up that stream is where we need to be focusing on addressing these causes rather than just trying to fix that last symptom that pops up.
We've got a comment saying better to treat the cause than the symptom, surely. Exactly. And
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to say, looks like time is escaping us. We're at 12:54. Um,
Okay.
and then, yeah, I'm wondering if you wanted to take any more questions or if you had a couple other um, topics you wanted to share.
Yeah. I had a feeling I would end up spending most of the time on these two plants. Is there any other questions that are coming up?
Oh, we got one from Allison
Yeah.
sharing. Um, Allison says, I've been unable to get back to sleep the last few nights. It's also hot at night. I'm wondering if this could be related to perimenopause. Staying curious.
Yeah, right. This curiosity. You know, there has been well-established research that um, people do tend to sleep better in colder environments, having the
I do.
room a bit, yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, the unfortunate thing with extreme hormone changes, such as menopause, is that for better or worse, it leaves the body up to the whims of the thermostat being a little wonky. And so hot flashes, another cause of insomnia. People, women being woken up because they're drenched in sweat and super hot. So again, it's something about, is insomnia actually the issue, or what actually needs to be addressed is um, navigating that underlying cause: hot flashes, pain, hypoglycemia.
Thank you.
I really like chamomile prepared as an herbal infusion, with hot water. So an infusion, just like with the fennel seed, but it's, as you can see, this plant is much more light, less dense. So all you really need to do for an infusion of this is getting the water to a boil, adding the chamomile, and you could do fresh or dried, covering the lid and removing it from the heat completely, and just let it sit and infuse for 30 minutes. Can be a great way. Tincturing is also a really wonderful way to extract the medicine. Another cool thing about tinctures is that they last a long time. Once an herbal medicine like chamomile or fennel is tinctured, it will be, the quality of it will last for quite a while, versus like the dried plants in a jar or in a bag are going to lose their luster and quality over time, especially depending on the conditions in which it's stored. Again, away from sunlight, extreme hot or cold. I would recommend storing in non-plastic containers just to reduce things like BPA and phthalates, all those like xenobiotics, man-made chemicals that are destroying our bodies and our environments. I personally try to use like glass or stainless steel type containers whenever possible to avoid some of those sort of substances that are found in plastics, because they can really throw a wrench in any body system, depending on body and constitution. Another characteristic, one more that I want to talk about with chamomile, especially this one. Oh, it's so bitter. It's incredibly bitter and tasty at the same time. And the bitter taste is actually a medicinal action in itself, because our bitter receptors on the back of our tongue activate the vagus nerve and can help get the body prepared for the rest and digest response. It can help stimulate the peristalsis, releasing digestive enzymes and bile flow, and just help calm us and get us into that parasympathetic response. Bitters are great for that, especially if we're like on the go and we're just like going from one stressor to the next. I've been thinking about this phrase all year: out of the frying pan and into the fire. Doesn't life just seem like that sometimes? So figuring out ways to stimulate that vagus nerve that's responsible for that opposite response, which is that parasympathetic rest and digest. Sitting down and breathing, because when we're eating on the go and in that stress response, we are not appropriately digesting our food. It can lead to things like indigestion, irritable bowel syndrome, that's upset stomach, nausea, just general malabsorption. So if there's a way you can figure out how to calm yourself down a little bit before a meal, you're doing yourself a really big favor. And bitters are a great way to do it. I mean, that's why I think salads and bitter greens are served before meals. That's why there are a lot of these specialty bitters that are added to different drinks that people will consume prior to a meal. Vinegar is another great one as well. How can you incorporate some bitterness and just some simple breathing and calming down with each meal that you are taking in and eating?
So brilliant. I love when, you can kind of verify social norms that we've been so used to, like salads before your meal, and it's actually there's a deep reason for it. We're definitely could be more connected with as a society, but it's kind of funny to see, naturopathic wisdom really be verified so many times over. It just keeps winning.
Yeah, totally. One more thing. What's the time? Okay, we're right at one.
We're at one.
I'm just gonna share one more invitation and story of mine when it comes to bitters. So in my first year of botanical medicine at Bastyr, we actually had this great project where we were given this like cute little like half-ounce vial of a bitter tincture. And there's different ones that we got to choose from, but Fennel Seed and chamomile were found in a decent amount of them. Again, peppermint also has those carminative actions, so I wouldn't know. Let me take that back. Fennel is not bitter. Chamomile is, but they have the carminative action in common, which those two are great synergistic supports. Anyhow, our invitation was to take a couple drops of our bitter tincture before each meal for a month and journal and notice what happened and what came up. And there's certainly a lot of different digestive bitters out there, or you could just, you know, pick up a single or maybe figure out a couple different bitter tasting herbs. And honestly, like, if it tastes bitter, then it'll work. And a lot of plants do have that. But maybe it's an invitation of a project that you would like to explore, is just beginning each meal for like a week or a month, um, with either a couple drops of a bitter tincture. Maybe it's a really potent cup of tea. Maybe it's apple cider vinegar that's at your house. And just noticing to see what comes up. You know, when we start to do stuff on a regular basis, such as, you know, having a cup of tea or even just a couple drops of a medicine to support us, in short time, it becomes not only habitual, but I want to say ceremonial, um, and can create a lot of depth in an activity that maybe there was not much intention in before. I've been discovering that just with doing some journaling in the morning. I started doing that this past week and already noticing what it's been gifting me. So, a fun creative idea for you all to consider. And I just want to thank everyone for showing up today and for all your contributions and comments and questions. The class would not be as rich and tangential without you. And thank you, Anne, for hosting today.